Alright, so first I started with a slab and I put it on a plaster form. Once I had it on there, I cut it to roughly an oval, and then I had to look and see, compare the height to the width of the head. Because remember, I want this to look like me, so if I make it too wide, it may not end up looking like my head. So I went ahead and cut off a little bit, and then I replaced the plaster form with a bunch of dry paper towels. And that's going to help it keep its shape while I'm working on it. So once I had that, it was about using the standard proportion measurements and even measuring my own face to figure out about where the eyes should be placed, where the center line is going. And if you haven't watched the standard proportions video, you may want to do that before you jump in. It'll teach you how to do the measuring that I'm doing here. So you can see me mapping out where the mouth is going to be and mapping out where the eye line is going to be here in a second. Remember that the eyes are about 1/4 of the width of the head. So once I have those on there, remember this is just a rough sketch. It's going to help me figure out right about where everything's going to go. Now you'll notice too that I've been using, so I have the skull here to show the depth that I need to add to it. You'll notice that I'm using wooden tools. Since I'm modeling, I don't really want to use metal tools. Modeling tools like wooden tools will help me push around the clay. I'm adding some to the nose here, so I have plenty to move around and take off. And you saw that I scored and slipped that on. You still want to make sure you're using the score and slip techniques. So since I have the eye sockets on the skull are pushed in on the face, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of clay to create that depth. And then I'm also going to be putting some more clay where the mouth and the chin is going to go. A lot of people tend to forget that your mouth is actually more of a cylindrical shape compared to the rest of your face. And so that's what I'm doing here, is just adding a little bit of clay so that I have enough that I can remove too. So that's part of it. You remember, you don't want to have more than 1 inch of clay thick, otherwise you might give yourself some issues with air bubbles. And but you do need clay in order to be able to shape it and everything. So here I'm adding some eyebrows, or the brow bone, sorry, not eyebrows. That's not till much later. And that is going to allow me to kind of shape and push in the eyes. I do want to caution you that since there's paper towels under your project, it's not going to be super duper sturdy. So if you put too much water or you push down too hard, it might totally collapse. So just be careful whenever you're pushing on your project. I strongly suggest you set up your image in front of you so that when you are going through and trying to get all this detail in there, that you don't have any issues with not drawing, your project not looking like you. So once you have pretty much everything in the right place, then you can start to really think about putting in a little more detail. I had to bulk up some areas to get it to look more like me. So in the picture I'm making this silly expression, so my nostrils are flared in it, so I had to put a little bit more clay on there just to give me a little bit more to work with for the nostrils. I also noticed that my funny expression meant that I had a little bit more of a raised like upper lip, so I made sure to put some more clay in that area. And once I do these things, you can start to see the personality come out. Don't be afraid to add and take away clay, but also be aware that if you want it to have personality, if you want it to have depth, that just drawing directly onto a form, an oval form, is not going to get you very far. It's not going to look very human. So you are going to need to make sure that you're building up. I'm noticing here the chin is too narrow for my chin, so I go ahead and add a little bit more to it. Also, the cheeks, because I'm smiling, need to have a little bit more clay on them so that they bulk up a little bit, especially right next to my nostril, where they kind of just like the muscles all move towards in that smiling funky face I'm doing. And you can really see it now that I've added that clay on there, that cheek muscle coming out. So the whole time I'm doing this, I'm using my wooden tools and my fingers to smooth the piece, to shape the piece. Sometimes I'll reach underneath and kind of push up if I've pushed too much. I'm re-sketching in the eyes, and I'm keeping in mind that they're in eye sockets. So if I push down a little bit more, it'll be good because I'll have plenty of room for eyelids and for the muscles all around the eyes. So I took some pieces of clay and I created like this football shape. Remember, I'm going to be putting a coil above and below so that it looks more round. Usually I work on both eyes at the same time, but you'll see me switch to just working on one eye. It's better to work on both at the same time because they look more symmetrical that way, but I wanted you to see like the whole process in one go. So I just focused on one eye. You see me put a coil for the top eyelid, a coil for the bottom eyelid, and then I can start to shape that using my wooden tools, and it'll start to look like folds of skin. You can use coils and clay to create that folded skin look. The eye still looks like it's in the face, but now it's looking like a round eyeball, and you can see the separate eyelid on top. It's really important to keep in mind that eyes should be the most sunken in area of the face because eyes are delicate and you need those bones around your eyes to protect your eyes. Now this next part I'm about to do, you see me take a slab of clay, or not a slab, a coil of clay, and I add in a fold right next to the outside corner of my eye. And that really helps to show that personality from that photograph. That's just those little things. Those are really important for you to notice, to take notice of, and shape. Now, in this video, I am using a photograph. I'm working through a photograph, and something with it is on the left side of the face, I actually couldn't see very well what was happening all the way to the left side of the face because of the way the head was turned. So I did struggle a little bit with what to do with the top right brow top left brow of this sculpt. And if I had placed a mirror next to myself, I could have just compared in a mirror, and that would have been very helpful. So if you need a mirror, just let me know. I'll go get you one. You can also open up your Chromebook and put your Chromebook camera on while you're working, and that's fantastic because you can keep turning your head. You're able to see all of that information there. So one thing that I didn't mention about the other eye is when you're trying to do a pupil, or the darkest part of the eye, what you usually do in a pupil is you draw it on with a black pencil or charcoal. But when you're doing a sculpture, you don't really have that that ability when you're sculpting. So what you can do instead is, if you have an area that's really dark, push in that area quite a bit. Less light will be able to reach that area, and it'll make it appear as if it is darker. So here I'm just kind of smoothing things out. Remember to be careful about adding too much water. You don't want this to turn into a pile of mud. You can see me really shaping the wrinkles right where the bridge of the nose meets in between the two brows. That's really important. If you see wrinkles or dimples, putting those in there can really create personality on your piece. So, in a minute here, I am going to go ahead and I am going to start working on hair. So for hair, now you could also put in ears first. Because of the photograph I'm working on, there's no ears in it. They're covered up by the hair. But for hair, it's a lot different than drawing hair, in that the clay you're using is not going to be able to make small enough like strands for it to look like actual hair. So what you're going to do is you're going to stylize it a little bit. I usually make some coils, and here you'll see me cut the coils in half, and then you score and slip them on. Now you can layer these coils too, so that you get like some areas look like there's strands of hair coming out from underneath other areas, all those fun things. Once you have a placement for them, then you take a tool and you start to create what looks like more individual strands. You can even push new pieces of clay on without scoring and slipping, and they should stay put, because of you're basically just mashing into those pieces. You see here I'm scoring and slipping, and then in a minute you'll see me start to actually draw on top of these little strands. And when I do that with the tool, it's I'm kind of following the lines and drawing on top of it. If there's an area where there's an overlap, I'll kind of go underneath the other strands of hair and like pull out lines from underneath it, and it'll make it darker in that area because there's more depth to it. I just kind of keep going until I have all the hair that I need for the project. And it's just as simple as just kind of drawing grooves all over the hair, and some of it is like you're pushing it down into the sculpt. Be careful not to damage your sculpt though. And it looks like hair. It's going to be more stylized though. So I just kept going. I even added more hair on top of that after I put in my first piece, and just kept adding to it until I was mostly happy with it. I do have plans to make this a little bit different, to add it to something else, but yeah, you can see how I'm just kind of playing around with those shapes and pushing them into the head there. Now, the last thing I'm going to do on here is eyebrows. You won't really be able to do eyelashes because the clay just can't handle things that thin. But I went ahead and put some eyebrows in there, and once again, just like the hair, just kind of carving in grooves works. Once you have your eyebrows and you have your project done, make sure to keep it wrapped if you're still working on it. But other than that, I hope you learned something today and you have fun making yours. Good luck.